Hello everyone and welcome to my next review. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has supported me thus far. I'm surprised I even have this many subscribers. But without further ado, here's my review of Necromunda Hired Gun. Necromunda Hired Gun is the latest game from Strumon Studios, who previously worked on the lackluster Space Hulk game. Strumon tried to resurrect and modernize the old 90s war game. Unfortunately, it was a flawed experience in more ways than one. Necromunda, on the other hand, is a buggy yet competent alternative to id Software's Doom. Warhammer 40k is more than just an overpriced hobby. In Warhammer, there is only one absolute: humanity is fucked, surrounded at all sides from aliens and demons. To help humanity in their efforts, whole planets were turned into massive factories that would produce the weapons of war. Hive worlds, planets of industry teeming with human life. Huge factories that stretched to the skies. Worlds devoid of any vegetation, leaving only huge hulking metal structures in their wake. But unlike planets under the watchful eye of the Imperium, these planets are home to many gangs who fight over territory. But one hive world stands above the rest: Necromunda. Hired Gun takes place in the underhives of the planet. Below all the factories are a network of tunnels, different gangs, abandoned mine shafts, and secrets long thought forgotten. In this cesspool of violence, your bounty hunter is here to exploit the power struggle and make some money along the way. Necromunda's story is practically non-existent, and aside from a few noteworthy characters like Jericho and Malachrithorum, it hardly warrants a mention. Events just happen around your character as they fight gangs and move up the food chain. You never feel invested in the story as you're constantly moving from place to place. Between each mission you go to Martyr's End, a neutral zone where gang violence is not tolerated. Most missions begin with you talking to many different characters in this zone. The dialogue has no impact behind it though. You just go back and forth talking to characters, getting more and more frustrated. It would have worked a lot better if a single person told you everything you needed to know and then get straight to the mission. This makes the pre-game mission structure an absolute chore. And even when you finally see some kind of story play out, it's told in such an incomprehensible way. Constant fade transitions are used in every cutscene. This makes the story impossible to follow, as you see characters move awkwardly around the scene, and little of the story sticks with you past the credits. But honestly, you didn't come to Necromunda for the story. You came to get paid and look good doing it. Doom Eternal succeeded in translating its brutal carnage into an elegant dance of murder. Everything, literally.
All of this just works. All of this just works.
Necromunda has a fantastic sense of movement, like Doom and Titanfall rolled into one. There are many different ways of traversal, from grapple hooking to wall running, sliding, and double jumping. Grapple hooking is used to get you to a point incredibly quickly, or to rip shields from enemies' hands. Wall running is difficult to pull off, as sometimes your bounty hunter will refuse to connect to the wall. Sliding is also another viable option, with a dash to get up close and personal, or to avoid danger. Levels are massive, offering many opportunities to use the verticality to your advantage, and enemies take full advantage of this verticality to get the drop on you, keeping the combat fast-paced and surprising. In Martyr's End, you can customize and buy weapons, upgrade your augmentations, and meet the most lovable doggo in all of Necromunda, your Mastiff, aka Mr. Choppy. Both you and your dog have a number of upgrades, such as speed, armor, health, and psycho-like abilities. You select these abilities through a sort of weapon wheel, though this means the selection has its own issues, as sometimes your inputs aren't registered and require you to re-input the command again, and enhanced strength is difficult to control as you move faster than the enemies around you, and will usually completely miss the enemy you're trying to fight. Weapon variety may leave a lot to be desired as well, but what weapons are there, such as bolters, grenade launchers, pistols and machine guns, feel fantastic to use. Necromunda tries to be like a looter shooter, but unlike something like Borderlands, Hired Gun doesn't pull it off. Weapon variety is very limited. Sure, they're all fun to use, but what's there doesn't really work for what they're trying to go for. In Eternal, the weapon mods really gave the game a fantastic sense of variety. In Necromunda, however, weapon variety is rather lacking. Most weapons boil down to variations of the exact same type, just called a completely different name, and most weapons you find in the environment are minor upgrades from what you have. I never felt driven to hunt down rare drops, as most of the time they could be outclassed by what I already have. Once I found one gold gun, I never found a single one again. Now let's get to your lovable mutt. Your dog isn't a constant companion. Think of him like a ball-seeking missile. His AI ain't the best, as half the time he will get stuck in the environment, and even when he tries to fight certain enemies, you will have to weaken them, as he can't bite through shields. The Underhives of Necromunda are filled with different gangs that are constantly fighting for supremacy. In some missions you can even see them fighting each other. Alas, it's difficult to differentiate them, as they all look the exact goddamn same. Enemy AI is terrible, as they literally line up to be shot at or to be executed. The Doom-like glory kills don't work like they do in Doom Eternal, as most enemies can be killed with one hit, leaving most fights turning into a conga line of death. The music in Necromunda is very similar to Doom. It doesn't have the same punch as Eternals, though it does work well with the gameplay. Sound design is much improved from release, where there were reports of muffled audio that made the NPC dialogue impossible to follow. Gun audio is also really impressive. Bolters sound like bolters. A bolter worthy of the Emperor's finest, and will reduce enemies to a fine red mist. Graphically, Necromunda is a pretty mixed bag, as environments have an impressive amount of detail, but visually the game isn't all that much to look at. The Warhammer 40k universe is a set of immense scale and detail, and Necromunda doesn't disappoint. You can see massive trains transporting weapons to spaceports, conveyor belts moving precious metals, huge factories that stretch up to the skies, and the amount of detail in every level is astounding. You can see propaganda for the Imperium and a huge temple dedicated to the Gene Stealer cult, filled with skulls. Even though the entire game is usually set in a factory, no two missions feel the same, unless you play side missions where the maps are reused. Necromunda, though flawed, is a decent homage to id Software's masterpiece, with a fantastic sense of movement, gunplay and level design. But under the hood, it's a flawed experience in more ways than one, whether that be the poorly implemented loot mechanics, wonky animations, soulless storytelling. Though Hired Gun is evidence that this team can knock it out of the park, they just needed more time to iron out the kinks. But their love for the lore is seen in every drop of this game. I'd recommend this to anyone who enjoys the Warhammer 40k setting, but for everyone else, maybe this is one bounty you shouldn't accept. Thank you for listening to my review. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.